doesn't really matter if you put it on that day or not. It was like, geez, Wednesday really stunk, Do better next time.
Right.
I don't need my wife yelling at me.
Right. When I first got it, standard.
Yeah, but it is.
How much did you spend on Halloween costumes?
How much did I personally spend on Halloween?
I do.
It keeps saying on TV how much people are spending this year on Halloween. I mean, it's almost as much as Christmas. It's almost as much as Christmas.
I just wear my old man costume. I've been wearing it for years.
Do you?
It's working.
Prudent.
And it's part of the fitness
Yeah.
track.
I was talking to some ladies, I forget what development she was in. She said that last year she had over 400 kids come to that house.
Yeah, we'll have that many.
400 kids.
In the basement.
When I first moved here,
I have
I've never seen that many kids out and about. It was early 2000s. It reminded me of the movie E.T. And like it just, kids everywhere. I'm like, wow, it's real. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Yep.
The people from outside of town or wherever they come in, I park in front of my house, their kids get out and they go everywhere.
Trip.
Sit there and come back.
Who hasn't fallen down and stuff, so.
Yeah, we used to get them, but not anymore, because everybody goes over into
How come we're not having the pumpkin people this year? How come we're not having the pumpkin people downtown?
Steps we have. Top landing. Inflation. You got 3 swollen heads.
Can't be because we ran out of pumpkins.
Yeah, because I've seen a whole bunch of people still.
So have I. Yeah.
Shoulder. Somebody else.
Unfortunately, my wife really likes
It's
Halloween,
yeah,
so
a 90-degree
I don't know how
turn,
much
but it's
candy.
three
I don't know how much I spend on
wedge
candy,
shape
but
to get you around the turn. Yeah.
it's
Remy
It
used
ain't
to
cheap.
stay on the big side, so it's just outside. So she pushes sometimes, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Another packed house.
any updates on house next to us? Or the house, up from us?
No. And they were fury, and quiet.
The code, does the code actually say shed or accessory building? I think it just says
Now 20 seconds, you can call in order.
Right, it needs to be political to be compliant now.
How many seconds did he say? I lost track.
20.
And I would think with all the vehicles, he's
I turned this off so I wouldn't be bothered, but now I don't have the clock.
Okay, very good.
because there's always
Couldn't get it off the other night, or last month, remember? I kept playing the dumb thing, they kept pestering me.
Yeah.
Good. Bottom right.
That's it.
Oh,
Jim, you
bottom
ready?
right, yes.
Daryl, you guys ready? Taneytown Planning Commission, please come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Would you please stand to the pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the records reflect the members of the commissions that's here this evening. Commission members should have received the draft minutes of September 26. Is there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
A motion that we accept the minutes on the last September 26th.
Mr. Brown made the motion. Bill seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes of September 26, 2022, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Likewise, carried. Thank you. Darrell, would you like to lead us into our delegation and our action items for tonight?
Sure, tonight we have Mr. Pat Small, who owns a business at Taneytown Olive Arts. He's looking for a site plan waiver. His goal is to erect a 6-foot fence on the Roberts Mills side of the lot, going over towards the main building. Anytime there's a site plan would be activated with the addition of above-ground infrastructure, which is a fence. So that's one I've not heard before, but it's there. And so Pat would like to ask for a site plan waiver.
Okay.
Pat, can you come up to the lectern, please?
Yeah, state your name and
Yeah, Patrick Small.
what your plans with the
Plans
fence.
are to erect a fence on Roberts Mill side, cornering around to the Franklin Street side.
Is that a privacy fence or security fence, or what are we,
At this time, it's security and privacy.
security?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or?
Pat, is the material still going to be chain link?
Yes, there'll be chain link fence.
Okay.
Open or slats in it?
It's open unless there is a stipulation, but it was going to be open for, basically for site.
Okay,
So that fence is gonna go from the building where the store is?
It's going to corner my property of 230 Roberts Mill and then go to the intersection there, at Roberts Mill and
Franklin?
and like catty corner across there down to somewhat to the side of the entrance of Taneytown.
Because the setback on that building that's on Roberts Mill, that's like, what, 8 feet, 10 feet back?
It's probably about that.
And that's where you're gonna have that fence kind of you're planning to come off?
Yes,
Straight off of that?
yeah.
Well, so Pat, we're still working on, we're
Right.
still working on the actual.
I understand,
location.
I'm just trying to get a visual. I went by there today and I'm just trying to figure out where that.
Yeah, would it be a breach of etiquette if I were to hand Mr. Small this map and he'd take a pen and draw exactly where it's going to be? Yeah, I couldn't interpret what that was.
You just can't give it
It'll be a
back.
rough drawing.
You just can't give it back to you, that's all. The way the rules work, I mean,
Maybe he could drop it on the floor, I could pick it up for him. Okay, thank you. currently, is that all blacktop? Is it gravel? We're looking at,
It's oh my gosh, can't think what it's called.
Hard
It's
packed porous
blacktop.
material?
It's when they grind up the blacktop.
Millings.
Millings, thank you. I couldn't think what, yeah, it's milling spread in there now.
all right, so you drill down the posts into that material, and it would be, what, 4 feet off of Roberts Mill Road?
Off the Roberts Mill Road, it's tentatively like 4 feet roughly. I don't have my other paper with me, but yeah,
Okay.
whatever the setback roughly would be from there was like,
So what,
Maybe more than 4 foot there.
I was gonna say, that's gonna
Corner
be,
of that building here is probably
it was, if you
8
look,
foot.
yeah.
We're still
You're
still
roughly
working on the
over that.
location. His goal is to get through the site plan scenario. And then depending on what we have coming on later in the, in our business, that could change a lot of fences in the area.
so would you help us out and tell us what the code is right now for that fence?
what's the setbacks like? It being a-
Setback should be,
It's way more complicated than that. Because equivalent front yards, like you take if you look at like the senior center, look how close they are to the front road. So we have to weigh that in the scenario with Pat's fence as well. So his lot is incredibly different than that lot. So we got to really, really be flexible and creative and figure out what we can do here. We can do a fence, we just don't know exactly where yet. Because we have to measure and take in what's next door.
So if you were building new on a clean site, the setback would be 40 feet in the front yard. And the way and the general business district does have the equivalent front yard that we've been talking about for a few months now. So that would be 40 feet from both. This lot is even more challenging because it also fronts on Antrim Street. So, I think we kind of look at it, or have looked at it historically, as there being like 2 front yards, one on Roberts Mill and one on Franklin. Those who were around, have been on the commission for a few years, might remember that when Taneytown Collision was there, we did a site plan waiver for them. And the fence at that point, it was on the Antrim Street side, but we let it go as close to Antrim Street as the edge of the building, because I think he put the first post like right at the edge of the building, and then I think the gate was there, and then it came down along Antrim.
It was actually probably about.
Did it get a little
it was
closer than
out-
the building, or
It was in front of the building.
was it? Okay,
It was in front. There is still a hole there.
okay,
My question really is then, if you
right.
talk
So I think
about,
we looked at that as being like, we kind of looked at it as that would being more the rear of the property.
so, if I can say so, so if you're looking at, there's 2 ways of looking at it, I guess, but if you're looking at the lot from Roberts Mill, do you consider that, because it's all one title, I mean, it's all one deed, I don't know, however you was it. So when I rent that spot out, like the buildings there on that 230 Roberts Mill, 230 AB, whatever. So that's considered that lot? I mean, do we define how much I'm renting to him and that's considered his front yard, my backyard? It's a gray area, but what I'm saying is if I say, oh, that's all that area, then it's not my front yard, but it still butts up to the other road. You know what I'm trying to, you know what I'm trying to
Still only
say?
one property, still only one
It's all
property,
one property, but there's like it's a rental thing.
but it's still only one property.
Correct.
And that's really the way we should consider it, as one property, right? That's the way I look at it.
Okay,
Yeah,
Am I
it's
correct
just
on
that
that?
It's one property.
One
and-
property.
And a challenging one at that. So just because it's got frontage on 3 streets, it's very unusual like that.
So the reason Collision Center was granted the ability to put a fence there is because that fence supported what was happening inside, vehicle repairs.
Right.
Insurance companies require, as does Maryland State Police, that the vehicle it has to be at least a 6-foot fence, has to be locked, that type of thing. So what the challenge also is the fact that Mr. Small, the fence is going up to house just your U-Hauls, correct?
at this time.
Yeah, because in that district, that's all it really could be for. Whereas,
I understand, yeah.
yeah,
So my question is that with that, and I'm respect, so if I wanted to house a vehicle in there, which not an automobile vehicle, just technically an RV trailer, what's the difference between me doing that there opposed to the people on Antrim next to Krause's doing and storing campers there. I don't understand what the difference in the zoning is, because they're both considered business, general business, from what I
Answer-
understand.
Okay.
I'm asking a question. I don't know why it makes it different. I'm just asking, not saying, I'm just asking.
Antrim is in the industrial area.
Actually,
But if I look at the zoning map, it's not. That's what I
the,
don't understand.
the code changed after Antrim mini storage was approved.
Okay.
Where's the new zoning map? Is that out for everyone to
It's
see?
the district regulations changed. The district regulations used to give the Board of Appeals the authority, much wider authority on what they could grant as a special exception. And they granted a special exception for the self-storage use. After that was done, there was kind of some pushback on it, and the Board of Appeals was sort of stripped of that broad authority and limited to like a much shorter list of special exceptions they could approve. So Antrim mini storage is there by special exception that can no longer be granted in the general business district.
But if
So,
it was at one point in time considered a storage lot,
right,
for whatever purposes, it still could be used as a storage lot.
yes, because they got
So-
that special
no, no,
exception
no,
under
no,
the old
what I'm-
code.
Let me rephrase that. So if my piece of property, that area was ever used as a storage lot at some time for another company, would it be grandfathered in? That, if I could show that it was? I'm just asking.
Do we need Jay to answer that?
Well, generally, if there's, and I think it has to do with, is the storage lot accessory to something that's happening there, like it would be with the towing company? And again, the commission members who have been around for a while might recall that we've granted site plan waiver or, site plan approval waivers for, I think, 3 different towing companies over the years. Taneytown Collision, Bowers Towing, and West Carroll. They all came before you guys to be able to put up a fence because, as Daryl said, insurance companies require that for towing companies. But they were all accessory to the towing business. So I guess we get into more a question about the use and whether it's a conforming or non-conforming use. So like a storage lot would be more akin to businesses that are in the industrial district currently. And generally, if there's a non-conforming use on a property, if that use ceases for more than a year, you can't replace that, even if it was something, 20 years ago and you want to put that use back. If that use stopped for more than a year, it's done, and then anything new is supposed to conform with the district regulations. So I guess the purpose behind the fence kind of gets into another discussion. If it's for the U-Hauls and, the U-Haul rental business is there on site, that's no problem. If it's, a boat, RV, and untagged vehicle storage yard or something, that could be a problem, so.
I would propose that it would not be, nothing would be untagged. It would have to be, because I'm a little, if you guys have noticed, I have been really cleaning up that whole area. But they all would have to be tagged and insured and be mobile. They would not be, but that's maybe for another discussion, but that is the end result. It is a means to an end to a future project I'm working on to do this somewhere else, but that's not happening fast as everything takes money, and this could get me to where I need to get to that point. So, if I would ask possibly if we do talk about the storage, if I did get something for that, would it be limited? Possibly we could grant it for an X amount of time, meaning just say till I get my other venture started, which may be like, say, 12, 18 months, and then cease that and relocate it to somewhere else. But it's a means to I can't just get there just like that.
So is there currently a fence south of what's labeled as building 11 in this diagram?
There's no fences on that.
There's no
property at
fence
all.
anywhere?
No.
So, you had mentioned this fence would be for security. Couldn't somebody walk through the carport or walk in between the two buildings, 11 and 0, and then get to where they want to be? Or are you
I'm sure
talking
guys-
about
guys-
security as in driving something off the lot? Like up through there?
No.
Or up through
This
there?
is- This is closed off here. You can't get between there.
Okay, how about,
That's a wall. There's a furnace room actually in between there.
okay.
You
and-
can.
And then the carport is closed off as well?
Yes.
So that truly would be a sealed
It'll
area,
be sealed,
once that would
yes.
be there.
You could, I mean, you can get in anything if you really want to. I'm not saying I never jumped a 6-foot fence in my life, but I'm just saying, it's,
are
So
we
it's
talking about
security,
two
not
different
privacy.
things? Are we talking about?
We are.
Actually, what you're asking for tonight is a site plan waiver for the fence.
correct.
Anything other than that isn't what's on the agenda for tonight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the concern is just that the fence goes up and then what do we end up with being in there? What's the use behind it? And that's, I think that's part of the concern is once the fence goes up, it becomes harder to regulate what is stored in there.
Okay, and so if we grant a waiver for a site plan on the fence tonight, before he puts a fence up, he still's got to come to you for a permit.
And you know, as part of the site plan waiver, you can explain to us what it's going to be for.
But you still got, there's still another step. He's got to come to you for a permit to put the fence up.
Yes.
And that requires another drawing of the fence, right?
Now, personally, I don't understand, and it was a long Monday, so I apologize. I just might be excessively dense this evening. I don't really understand what's going on in terms of the main motivation for the fence. I get that you want to put a fence up.
The main motivation
But all
of the fence
these,
is the
future
whole-
endeavors and ventures are nebulous.
Okay, so the whole idea months ago about this fence was to create a storage lot for RVs and campers for the people in town that move, like Meads Crossing, that cannot have, they can't park on their property because they're not allowed to. Okay, so I'm creating an avenue for them to have it, they can store it, while they're not using it. It's to create an income for, revenue for, to help offset, everything else for my, whatever. But that's the whole thing is why I originally was planning to do a fence.
So what's the difference between using it to store somebody else's property other than using it to store U-Hauls?
And it,
Is there, I'd like to have that clarified first.
So,
If there's any.
yeah, so Mr. Small has actually had an apparatus stolen off the lot. How long ago was that, Pat?
about a year or two ago.
Yeah. So he wants security, so well, my understanding was from our conversation is for security for that enterprise. The property that you and I had talked about, Pat, a couple weeks ago, that is industrial, okay? I got that right. The map I look at every day shows Antrim storage as industrial still. So, yeah. But the property that we talked about, your scenario would be allowed down there easily. Maryland state law says that if we don't have a zone for a type of business, we can't deny a permit. So,
He's referring to something I'm working on trying to buy a piece of property. But that's later.
So this particular property that we're talking about tonight, what is it zoned for?
General business.
general business.
General business.
The issue is the code doesn't specifically list storage lot, vehicle storage lot, anywhere. So it's Daryl's job to kind of look at the uses in the different districts and decide what uses are most similar to that, and then make a ruling on, the district that is most appropriate, if it's not something that's specifically called out. Stuff like, retail, food service, that's pretty clear cut. But there's a lot of uses that really aren't, like, a storage lot. So things in industrial district include warehousing, things like truck terminals, distribution yards, construction and maintenance office in site, that kind of thing where you might expect to see, vehicles and equipment stored, much like Crane Masters, for example, up on York Street. You see all their equipment there, they're in restricted industrial. That's the type of thing that tends to go in industrial, where the general business tends to be more, you know, commerce, customers coming in and out, you know, mercantile or office use, things of that nature. So, but again, it's not, the code is silent on, you know, storage lot.
So the examples that were given, I'm thinking about walking through Meads. I know there's a gentleman with a boat, so there could be a boat on a trailer parked there. There could be an RV that doesn't have its own engine, so pulled behind a truck, parked there. Maybe a fourth car.
But I would not take any vehicles, no automobiles, no trucks. It's strictly,
trailers and
it's
RVs.
strictly trailers, not even drivable motorhomes. Just gonna be trailers, campers, boats like that, tagged, trailered. Nothing, it has, it has to be neat and clean.
And would they potentially be stacked like a valet where maybe 3 would have to be moved to get 1 out
No,
and then
no.
put back in, or there would be?
That would be like a self-serve, like if I wouldn't be there, it'd be a gate where they could go in and get their own and come out.
So with that gate there, what would be your estimate, knowing that trailers are different sizes, but let's say 25 feet
30.
trailers? So
30
what-
would be the largest.
I'm sorry, 30 would be the
30 would be the
largest?
largest.
So I think we're blurring lines a little bit with, you know, the use versus the fence. I mean, they obviously are connected. You know, but if we're talking about you know, a new business use, that in itself can trigger the site plan ordinance as well. You know, if somebody were coming, you know, with a greenfield site and wanted to, you know, put up a, you know, 6,000 square foot paved lot to store, you know, boats and RVs, they would be going through a site plan process, and we would talk about things like the fencing, ingress, egress, but we'd also be talking about buffering from, you know, adjacent uses. So that's part of why I'm a little concerned about the, you know, if we're talking about, you know, the existing U-Haul business that's happening on the site, the fence could be, you know, considered accessory to that use. But if we're talking about a brand new use as a, you know, a storage yard, it just gets into another discussion, I guess.
And I agree with the blurring, but the reason I went off on those tangents was because it was not really sure what the use would be. And a site plan, I mean, so no engines involved. I'm thinking no potential for oil spills, fuel spills. And so a site plan, you think about environmental impacts. So that's where I was going with all those questions, to see what was the intent aside from the fence.
I'd like to have Jay come in on this. Jay?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've heard the discussion, and I think Jim has said that, you know, we're kind of blurring the lines here. You had asked a question a little while ago about what the difference was if you store your own vehicles or you store somebody else's. That was the crux of it. And that's coming down to what the use of the property is. Okay, and we have to follow the zoning law. And if I am storing my own vehicles, and we'll use Crane Master. Crane Master's storing vehicles outside their building. That's accessory to my principal use, which is industrial Crane Master fixing things. But if my use is different, and usually if it's a secondary use, then it's not an accessory use. It's not an incidental accessory use. It's a secondary use to the property. And you can have secondary uses, but they either need to be permitted in the code or have granted some type of special exception. Now, the good news for your group is you don't really have anything to do with the zoning interpretation. That's the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's Mr. Hale. So if he determines that what is being proposed is not an accessory use to the existing building, then he would have to say you need to go some other route. So the issue before you, to kind of crystallize it, is whether or not you are going to waive a site plan for the installation of a fence. And what Mr. Wieprick's saying, if you look at it backwards, sort of, if you say, hey, if you're going to be storing boats and campers, that's not an accessory use, that new use would trigger a site plan regardless of whether you're putting a fence up. So the site plan and the fence would be incidental to that type of use. If it's just simply, and I think Mr. Hand said earlier, you know, a security issue, we want to put a fence around the property. You can go ahead and grant a site plan waiver for that, and a fence can go around the property. That doesn't grant any type of use. So if you can't just start putting boats in there without getting a use approval from the zoning administrator if the code allows it. That makes sense?
It does on my end. The rest of you okay with that?
Clean that up.
So to go back to you, Mr. Hale, do you feel like this is in alignment with the use, like it fits, it's under the umbrella?
The fencing should be, in my opinion, allowed for the protection of his assets on the site, not for vehicle storage.
Are we here for that, or are we here just for the fence?
Yeah, well,
Let's get.
You brought it up, Pat.
I know, but I'm not gonna try and step on any toes. And I can stand here and say, what if I just parked all my 10 trailers on that lot? I mean, it's my lot, they're my trailers. What if I'm not trying to be like that. It's, but what if I just, what's the rule with that?
You can do that. You can store.
I could have my
you can
buddy
store
Mike
those-
come bring his camper,
You can store those trailers.
Right.
For a fee, if you like, in an industrial zoned area.
right, I understand
General
what you're
business,
saying.
you cannot. Now, if you could think of some type of business that you would operate out of your main building that would substantiate or justify those vehicles being there. And I've thought about it in depth and can't think of one for you, Pat.
Oh, I can think of one real quick.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm gonna repair trailers.
That's
See,
pretty.
it's a whole gray area. Let's just go back to the initial thing and say if we can go with the thing for the fence, then we'll go from there.
Who owns the U-Haul trailers? Do you personally own them?
I don't.
Or do you
I-
facilitate them?
Yeah, I
You
facilitate.
facilitate?
I rent them out. I'm just
So isn't that the same as him basically storing trailers on there? I mean, I'm not familiar because he technically doesn't own the trailers. He is facilitating them for U-Haul. It's basically, you know what I mean?
for
Yeah.
the people
So
that rent
technically,
them.
those aren't his property either.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it turns on whose property it is. It's a business. Okay, that's the story here, is that if you're opening this lot for third parties to come and conduct business, like a mini storage, like a U-Haul storage, like a trailer storage, then that has to be looked at under the zoning law. So that's the problem that you have. And I think the path forward here is if you want a fence, then you just are going to say that it's for your own accessory use and you can't do anything else with it. And you take this bite of the apple and you get to put your fence up. And then the applicant can come back in and say, all right, I'd like to have the zoning code change, or I'd like to have this. I just don't think there's a way to back into this with degrees of grayness. It's
One last thought, if I may. So right now, it's technically, there's a guy renting the one building from me that is a car dealer. He's a licensed dealer, approved through the town, so he can park cars on that lot. Am I right or wrong? Am I right? Am I right or, no, is there a licensed dealer in that one back building? And Gunner's Auto Sales, or I don't even know what it's called, to be honest with you.
Right, so
But I'm asking,
yeah, his goal is to purchase vehicles, fix them up, and sell them. Okay? And from his last scenario a year ago, he wasn't going to have a sales office. He was basically going to sell them, online or whatever. But if that changes, it changes. So those vehicles are there because what's happening inside the building is vehicle sales. And that's why, so they're allowed to be there.
all right, I'm
All
just,
right? Now, you're pretty close on that repairing trailers thing. But we're
asking.
yeah, we're
I'm just
talking.
asking.
We're talking. Let's get the fence squared away.
Let me
first.
So
see
if
I
we
can bring
embrace
this
the
to
bite
you.
of the apple, we could simplify by what Mr. Gola just said is we can merely look at this as a fence, yay or nay. If we say yay to the fence goes up and it's for personal use, but no business because that's a different bite of the apple. Is that right, Mr. Gola?
That's right. Right now, and you're getting to the point where we'll simplify this, is that you need to decide whether or not you're going to have a site plan waiver. That's really what you're talking about. He wants to put a fence up, requires a site plan. You can waive the site plan, and then he can go about putting his fence up. Your body doesn't deal with the use ever. So there isn't a need to convince you or give you ideas or say, your body can't vote to make a use or not use. That's Mr. Hale and the Board of Zoning Appeals. So right now, your decision is, should he go through a site plan to lay out where he wants his fence? and then say what he's going to use the property for. And as he said, he's going to use it for security for his existing uses. So if you feel that that justifies a site plan waiver, which is what the request in front of you is, that's what your motion and vote is. And then he goes back to Mr. Hale for the next step.
And so to summarize, so I understand, our body is merely site waiver for the fence. So we don't have to concern ourselves with any conditions or parameters because that's not our wheelhouse. That's BZA and Hale. So we are just talking about yay or nay for site waiver for a fence, and then that's it.
That's correct. That's how I understand this, yes.
Okay.
And since we're in the same block that we granted a waiver for the collision repair. So it's the same block. So I see no reason why we shouldn't grant this waiver for this project.
For the fence.
For the fence.
Yes, for the fence, because that's what's on the agenda.
Right.
Waiver for the fence.
Nothing else.
That's all we're talking about. So if somebody would like to put that on in a motion so we can move forward with this, I'd appreciate it.
I move we grant the site waiver for the fence.
Second.
Okay, Lee and Brown. Okay. Any further discussion on it? Any comments from the floor? Okay, all those in favor of that motion of granting a site plan waiver for the fence at this location signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk.
I think we're going around in circles.
We were.
All right.
Alpha and the Omega, though.
All right. Ordinance and agreements for review. Have anything there?
No, sir.
Okay, how about your report then, Daryl?
Okay, just a couple items. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the MPCA conference is in Frederick. A number of us will be attending. Hopefully, if anybody has anything to bring back to share with some of the members who couldn't make it, let's try to do that. The city manager and I have been working with the Sheets organization. We're soon be bringing that off our agenda under construction phase projects. Speaking of which, there's a number of changes there. Garnet Beam will be added to the active site plans next month. We had a couple other things. Meads, section 4 and 5 have come off the construction phase projects listed on the agenda. Meads Crossing Community Center has now come off. And of course, the B-Dot Enterprises, the old Havilah site, that is a complete project. And I don't know if you've had a chance to go out there. It's gorgeous. It's rather amazing. It's always been an attractive building to me, but it's
The next step.
yeah, really did. Yeah, and check out that tent before it comes down because it's going to soon come down.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that thing was short, right at 6 figures. And they have to take down the tent because it doesn't do well over the winter time. It's a big sale. And that's all I have.
All right. Moving right on into the legal update.
Good evening, everybody. We've been trying to close out a lot of things. So you've had some letter of credit releases this month. You've had some deeds that have been executed, transferring all the unglamorous stuff, the things you approved years ago, and we finally take them off the books at this point in time. So that's really where we've been. There hasn't been any movement now that the Sewell annexation has been finalized. We're not sure what the next step is. We're leaving that for the applicants to decide. And basically, and as the city manager may talk about at some point in time, it's going to come down to issues with MDE and capacity. And so we have lots of work to do on that before there's really anything more that can be done by anybody. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Anybody have anything for Jay? All right, thank you. Thank you, Jay. Tiffany?
Hey, Tiffany.
County liaison,
What was that?
the county liaison.
That's me, Tiffany Fawcett, County Liaison. For some updates, for the county's comprehensive rezoning text changes, the Board of County Commissioners held 2 public hearings on September 22nd. They are scheduled to discuss the proposal again on November 1st. The 2022 spring amendment to the 2019 Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan was approved by MDE on October 7th, and the fall amendment to the same plan, planning will request consistency from the Carroll County Planning Commission on November 3rd, and then will brief the new Board of County Commissioners on December 8th. There are smaller amendments in the fall and the spring for the triennial updates. And then every 3 years, as the name implies, there's a larger update to the water sewer master plan. And so for this coming spring amendment, we're going to go ahead and not process a 2023 spring amendment to the water sewer master plan. Instead, we'll concentrate and focus on updating the 2022 triennial update. And that'll kind of be a reset for the water sewer master plan. And then it will, hopefully, we'll be on track for the fall one next year, 2023 fall. And for the triennial update, municipal water sewer chapters and maps were distributed to the municipal staff for review and updates. The Transportation Master Plan continues with the county, and the Planning Commission did begin reviewing the draft maps on October 5th, and chapters will continue to be presented at the regular scheduled meetings. And finally, the 2022 Carroll County Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is also the Taneytown Hazard Mitigation Plan, has been submitted to the Maryland Department of Emergency Management and FEMA for review. And we just now wait and see what MDEM and FEMA have to say in their evaluations. And that's everything. Any questions? Okay,
Any
thank
questions
you.
or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Moving to old business. Let's see what we do with our front yards.
Okay, ready to do something?
Let's go. Get into it.
Somewhere through here.
We met out at, or discussed a property, a corner lot. So as with all corner lots, there are 2 equivalent front yards required. And we played with numbers like 30%, 50%, and 60%. Everybody find it?
Yep. got it.
So the code currently allows for the planning, for the zoning administrator to waive up to 30% of a required side yard. So starting at the, in the R10,000, the average, most of the front yards are 35 feet. So at the 30% mark, you're coming off the building, call it 12 feet. At that point, the fence can be 6 feet. All front yards can have 4-foot fences, okay? So and then we got to thinking, well, what if we go out 50% and out 60%, which we all, those of you that met me out at the site, got to see what that looks like. It's a much more substantial yard. The aspect is if you have a corner lot and you have a 4-foot fence, if that's all you're allowed to have, there's no relief, well, you don't really have any security, you don't have any privacy. So, poles or, anything that may happen in the backyard, you have a 4-foot fence unless this body allows some relief. So we have numbers like 30, 50, and 60. They could be anything, but, we were actually able to see what that means. And this is in regard to just fences, okay? That's all we're talking about tonight, just fences. Any questions?
I would like to point out real quick that the lot that you all visited on Bowie Mill Avenue, that lot and block is a little bit out of the ordinary in that there are only 2 homes on that stretch between side streets, and their rear yards abut each other. A more typical scenario is the corner lot abuts a house that faces the street on the equivalent front yard side. So when we look at this drawing with the different colored lines, imagine, if you will, a house to the bottom of the page facing Bowie Mill. So that house is going to be at 35 feet back from Bowie Mill where the blue line is. And whatever is in front of that is going to be in their view out the front, their front window. So when we talk about those reductions, it wasn't really that apparent when you stood there at this block because, the two rear yards abut each other. So you weren't really getting quite the typical corner lot scenario. So please, I just wanted to ask you to keep in mind, the view shed from the front of the, neighboring house in a typical block.
And so to confirm right now, 30% is what happens if, right?
Correct. We can send certified letters around to all the contiguous property owners, and if nobody objects, we can do a 30% reduction.
So I'm not sure of how many people were able to get out. And then combining with what Mr. Wieprecht just said about the potential for the view out the front, if we want to start the conversation off, I would like to focus on, yes, increasing from 30, but then entertain a discussion among our board between 50 and 60%. Unless there's someone who wants to speak adamantly about keeping it at the 30.
Now, if you want to go ahead and start something, go ahead.
Having taken a look at the two backyards that were adjoining, I was more inclined to go with the 60. It seems like a line of sight vision from a typical stop sign around the corner. I believe there was sufficient clearance to see what may be coming. So now I'm pondering, I just need to ponder a little more what was just shared. I don't know across Taneytown how rare or common is it at the, those two lots. Is that 20% of the cases potentially? Is it 40? Is it 50? Is it 80%? And maybe the front facing next to this possible scenario would be the exception. So now I'm kind of wavering back and forth between 50% and 60% personally, just because of that idea of a view. So if I'm thinking out the side and I'm seeing 20 feet of fence versus
4 feet difference.
yeah, 18 versus 22 and a half. So I guess what, 4.5 feet potentially. Yeah, that's just what I'm entertaining. So what are y'all's thoughts?
It's still up to though, right? Like, I mean, you still
Right.
issue up to that 60%. So I mean, if they go out, look at the property, see what makes sense for it, I think the 60% still makes sense because it is up to them whether, they can go up to the 60, reduce it to 50 if it's a visibility concern. I think allowing it to go to 60 definitely gives us a little bit more maneuverability with the people and what fences they want.
So I think whatever you put the maximum amount at, if I'm that homeowner, I'm gonna put it at the maximum amount. Because even at 22%, or 22 foot, I'm sorry, you still got that strip of grass that's outside there.
Like
beside
6
the
feet or something
sidewalk,
like that, or
that you
whatever.
can't do anything with except mow.
So it-
So if you're the homeowner, if I'm the homeowner, I want to use that.
And I can't believe I'm even bringing this up, but just for discussion purposes, the block that folks visited on Bowie Mill is probably the exception rather than the rule. Most blocks have more than two lots, fronting a street between cross streets. But in this scenario, 60% may look different than a more conventional block where you have a bunch of actual front yards and then an equivalent front yard, at the end of a string of 6 or 7 houses. In that scenario, having a privacy fence stick out, let's see, how many feet would it be? Instead of 35 feet from the curb, 13 and a half from the curb, are gonna be perceived as sort of jutting out beyond everybody else's. But in this scenario, it probably would be, not a problem at all.
And that's why it's up to the zoning administrator to make that determination on the up to 60%, right? I mean,
He would
that's
have the discretion, right?
Yeah,
Is
you
that
have
what
the
we're-
discretion.
So is it discretion, or is what you shared the idea that if we change it to 60, that's kind of the default? You don't have to tap into neighbors and send letters for approval. Like ultimately, if that's written in the code, wouldn't that be the default? It's 60?
Well, it is written into the code. Now, so things like at the discretion of whoever's sitting in my chair next week or next year, whatever, that there's discretion there. Because right now, it's 30% or nothing. I think the ability for a neighbor to tell another neighbor, especially when you reach out to 4, 5, and 6 people, if there was a skirmish when you moved in and your vehicle was blocking the street, and they remember that, as a for instance, that's a lot of power to give someone over their land.
That's at the 30%. That's where you have to
Yeah,
send out to.
yeah. So, I've advocated for a while that I think the discretion should be at the zoning administrator and not sending out contiguous letters. I just think that's that's a lot of ability to give a neighbor if there's been some type of skirmish or what have you.
I think the discretion is the best option out of it, because if it's a fixed 60% or whatever it is, and you have 4 houses in a row instead of like it is now, each house is facing a different street, you would have the discretion then to make that change. It wouldn't definitely be a fixed, a fixed number.
Right.
You would have the discretion.
Up to.
Up to 60%.
I mean, if you do go that route, I mean, consistency is going to be the thing that we need to, employ as far as what the zoning administrator does, because, we don't want to get into a situation where we give the flexibility to do, up to 60%. Of course, as Dan mentioned, most likely everybody's going to want that full 60%. So if we deny one person 60% and give them 50%, but we give somebody else 60%, they're going to, and it's very typical that when you deny somebody, they drive around town and find a bunch of examples that say, well, they've got one and they did this and so on. And sometimes they're not permitted or we can't find record of it. But anyhow.
How many possible combinations do you think? Because what I'm thinking is
Probably 2. Probably this scenario and then the more typical
front-facing.
scenario. Right, so maybe in this scenario, you go the 60%, but maybe in the other scenario, you go 50%.
And
something
that's
like
what I'm
that.
leaning towards, because I don't agree that discretion would make everything okay because of lack of consistency, especially dealing with humans and wants and all that stuff. So I don't think that would be prudent. I think if we're going to move forward with this, making a change, we would need to be specific for the different possibilities. So for me tonight, I'm not comfortable saying this is how it would be, because this is only one scenario. So I usually am one to want to be done with things. But I would suggest tabling this and let's take a look. Let's be explicit. If we have front facing, it will be this. If we have this scenario, 2 backyards,
back.
it will be this, yes. And I would feel very comfortable being specific and clear about those, because right now it's
Right.
it's 30% or nothing.
So we
I would
could-
like to say 50% or nothing for this, 60% or nothing for that.
If we could reach consensus on something like that, we can wordsmith it and introduce it, and it comes back to you guys for comment again. So once it's introduced by mayor and council, you still get another shot at it.
Okay.
If we're comfortable, maybe indicating that, and if I'm following here, we would say that if the corner lot abuts a side yard of another dwelling as opposed to a rear yard, the setback may be reduced up to 50%, whereas if it abuts the rear yard of the adjacent dwelling, it can be reduced up to 60%. Is that kind of the gist of it?
That's the way I'm leaning.
So what happens if I'm the neighbor?
Right.
Will I still get a
So
notification?
you wouldn't, right, the idea is to kind of do away with the notification for fences.
Leave it up to the zoning
Just for fences. So for sheds, we would still need to send the letters around. And again, if using the sketch, if somebody puts a fence back in the back corner here, if we're reducing to 60%, somebody could conceivably put their shed there. If we don't do something different for sheds than fences.
Right.
And then in that scenario where now you have a neighbor facing Bowie Mill, the shed is gonna be, in
their front
view
yard.
out there front, basically, the equivalent of the front yard from their perspective.
So Lee, would you explain what you just said a couple minutes ago again about the 60%, 50%?
It's what Mr. Weeprek just said. It's basically, it's based on the situations that are presented. So for this that we took a look at, and we went out and saw the measurements. Personally, I'm just one person, I would feel comfortable saying 60% because it's two backyards that are touching each other, and there is no side-facing house that would have an obstructed view in their front yard.
That's one scenario.
That's one scenario, but I would lean towards if there was a scenario where this top one, this is the backyard, and then we have the front of the house facing this
Facing
way,
Bowie Mill.
then I would feel comfortable with a 50%. I wouldn't want it to be 60 because when I look out, I'm gonna see fence, and
But he's,
So where backyard abuts backyard, you could do a 60% reduction.
Yes.
Where backyard abuts side yard, you would do 50%.
yes.
So where did the 60% come from? Why not 75?
Make a motion.
On the typical lot, the 60% puts you pretty much even with the radius of the curve on the corner, and that's about where the stop sign is set. So I think when you start going beyond that, now we start talking about potential encroachments into visibility.
as Lee said, and I was out there too, that 60% kept you that line of sight.
Yeah. So that's assuming that your 6-foot fence is gonna go all the way to the front of the house, then? Okay.
Your front
But if
corner.
you stopped your 6-foot fence at the rear of the house, then you could go out farther.
Not more than 60.
Well, I'm just saying, if visibility is your reason.
Yeah, well, once again, I think that we should make a recommendation that would not create a nauseating continuum of possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So I think we can be clear, and, I'll stay there.
Yeah, I'm good with that, yeah. I was just curious where the 60 came from. Yeah.
So we want to put that in a consensus, and you put
And
the
we
wording
can-
together and bring it back as a,
And we can incorporate that into a draft ordinance. And if we're comfortable with that, the city attorney will also, of course, review it and do some wordsmithing if needed. But if you're comfortable with the idea, we can go ahead and make the changes to the text and get it introduced at next month's mayor and council meeting, and then it will come back to you at your November meeting for review and comment officially.
Just one comment. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So with back-to-back, 60%. When that other house is perpendicular to it, we're going to do 50%.
How does that strike you?
Right.
so how does that affect of all the fences that you approve now, that's 30%?
I haven't done one yet. Now, so,
That's why it came up, because
sorry?
this is why it came up.
Yeah. So this gentleman wanted privacy. But, I think that sometimes with zoning, sometimes things need to change. Like mass solar. We don't have anything in the code for it. We right now know that we should. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But in the case of so your average, even the area where I grew up in Fairground Village, those corners are not like the spacious corners you find in Meads, 4, 5, 6, 7, as you were Meadowbrook. They're spacious. That house there that was a gigantic corner. I mean, wide open, wide roads. And that's how the newer areas are. There's a lot of sight distance, and it's designed for that too.
So you haven't issued a fence permit in the past 6 months or so?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah,
In effect, our decision here wouldn't affect it?
Well, so I got a little bit of a tab. There are three fences that were originally wanted to be, they wanted to be, homeowners wanted them to be 6-foot fences. Depending on what happens tonight, I will make a phone call and say, hey, just so you know, because the fence companies are, 6, 8, 10 weeks out, at least. Right. Yeah. So I've been fiercely going by those 3 properties. Because I can't say anything right now because there's nothing to say.
Okay, so is that the general consensus? Can we handle that just as a consensus for now?
Yeah, because there's
Okay.
nothing's been formally introduced, so it's just, right.
Bill, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Chris? Fred?
As long as we
Dan?
covered those two.
Okay, you got the consensus of the commission then?
Right, who made the motion?
It was
Yeah,
just
it's a
consensus.
That's, okay, sorry. Yeah, and gents, just so you know, in the latter part of our meeting last month, I watched that video 15 times to try to figure out who. All right, he's like, well, all right, Chris wasn't here. Who made the motion? Because it's like your mouse, you can't see it real well on the computer. It's like, all right. So I think it was Lee, but I'm not really sure. So I have to make sure I get these motions before you guys
Well,
leave.
sometimes I write them down, sometimes I don't.
Well, I don't hear them, so, yeah.
Okay. All right. We can move that one aside. Restricted general business district regulations.
And so I think the big focus here was the idea that, okay, we deleted video rental stores because Blockbuster. And then other similar businesses, that was the big item to open up, to provide some flexibility as well as adding residential. Right. So that would be where I suppose we focus our attention if y'all still feel okay about those items, because we were trying to increase the flexibility of the restricted general business district.
Yeah, so the only question I had was like, I guess, I mean, I know we said similar businesses, but I guess I'm not sure what a similar business is. So, under the top section there, when we said retail businesses, so that means it's a hardware or a supply store also, right?
I would think so.
The letters show what the retail businesses that we're talking about are, right? From one,
From one, then it goes down through.
yeah, then
We
it goes
started
down.
ABC, yeah.
Yeah, one says
Those are the
retail
retail
business,
business,
and then it lists a bunch of, the antique shops, and then it says,
then it goes
other
down to-
similar businesses.
And
But because it says retail business, that's why I said, well, I guess that would include a hardware store, right? Sale merchandise.
I would agree with you. I'm thinking all those are examples where it's a brick and mortar location. They have items to sell. People go in, they purchase, they leave. And so I would think a hardware store would fit that as a similar business.
And then under the, let's see, what was the next group here? There's some of the businesses involved in rendering of personal service or repair, so,
Where you at with that?
I'm sorry, line 67. So we got businesses
gotcha.
involving rendering of personal service or the repair and service of small equipment, so small engine repair, lawnmowers, right? That fits right into there, right?
I would think so.
But,
I thought
I
we
guess it
had, I thought we
depends,
had an
'cause-
issue with that.
but it would stop at not an auto repair, right? Because I would say an auto repair is not small equipment.
Is it not weird to have other similar businesses and then also in two have specifically including? Is that, I don't know, does this make more sense to me because you're specifically including these businesses and then just put in other small similar businesses?
So you're saying like flip it?
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, it just seems like a weird,
Yeah, maybe a weird, yeah. I guess I was just trying to understand what we would accept in that area. So when I read repair of small equipment, that's small engines, lawnmowers, that kind of stuff. But to me, that would not include like a service station auto repair.
I would agree with that.
Somewhere you would have to draw the line.
Yeah, we,
Okay.
Okay,
On number 2, my only thing is maybe take out the specifically part of number 2. It's just a weird thing to have there, and then also list other similar businesses.
Like such as,
Yeah,
instead of
such-
specifically?
yeah.
Could we just drop the word specifically?
Yeah, just drop the
saying-
word
Yeah,
specific.
no, that's a good call.
okay,
And I think that word has given, when I was the zoning administrator, I think that word gave me some trouble years ago.
Yeah, because somebody's gonna come and-
Because it's, I don't think the other districts use the word specifically.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Just because somebody is gonna end up bringing that up at one of these, when somebody goes to do one of these, they're gonna be like, well, it says specifically here, and then we're gonna be like, other similar businesses, and they don't really match up in that regard.
Yeah.
No issues with that.
okay. So what else do we want to do with this? Are these just the word changes that we want to make and going to present it to,
And
City
right,
Council?
this would be the same scenario as the equivalent front yard, so we could, make that tweak to it, introduce it at the November meeting, and then it'll come back to you guys. Once it's been introduced by mayor and council, it'll come back to you for your comment and recommendation at that point.
okay. Is that the consensus, Lee?
Yeah.
Dan? Brad? Chris? Yes. Unanimous, yep. All right. Urban mix was the next item.
Chairman, the property that we've been eyeballing for this urban mix has recently sold and gone to settlement. We have spoken to the new owners who plan to come to speak to the city manager, myself, about things that they would like to do with that property, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
If it's, I'm just asking that maybe you want to,
we'll just table that until you can bring us more information. Good?
Yep.
Okay. And the solar projects, we want to just hold on to that for a while till we get more information on that also.
we're getting more information. We're not the only ones that don't have a lot on solar, I'll tell you that. Because typically you get solar for residential, you get solar for your business, then solar farms or fields, if you will, for, like you see outside of Hanover, the canned good place. It's unbelievable. I mean, yeah, that's acres and acres and acres.
Union Bridge, same way.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah.
But I know that when you ride down 97 South, at where Carroll Community College is, that used to be just a beautiful view. And now you got the solar cells there. And I understand they serve a purpose, but,
So
you know,
when we get to that, I mean, if you can identify places like that, I think it would be great for us to go out and actually see them. What we did on the fences, I thought was, it's really, since I've been here, it's the first time we really collaborated and actually looked at
Yeah.
stuff
Made
and
a lot-
talked about it. So I'm really, really happy with that. So if we could do that more often, I think that would be a
Absolutely.
lot better.
yeah.
Clarity.
Okay. Discussion on the comprehensive plan, chapter 1 and 2.
Can we just start on page 1 and go through it?
That's the way I'm looking at starting.
All right.
You have, did you get the latest copy there?
Oh, it changed up.
Okay. Someone want to lead us off here on this?
The first page is just some comments on the graphic that we need to make it better.
Yes.
So that's, so we'll come up with something different there.
There's a lot of irony with the growth area being well outside the bounds of the city.
All right, sorry. Taking up too much room here.
that's it for page 1, yeah? So page 2?
Yep. So the top, what's in blue there, that's what comments that I made, so if you don't like them, you can yell at me. But anyway, so on that one there, that last sentence there, we said actions are often referred to as objectives or whatever. I just didn't like that sentence. You know, for me, objectives are a larger goal and action is a specific task. So to me, I would just recommend we just take that sentence completely out. I don't know what it really adds.
Okay, anybody? Okay,
I'm certainly good with that.
let's do it.
Sure.
Can make this bigger next time, Dan, I appreciate it.
It's bigger on my computer.
I see it. I'm squinting to see it now. Okay. So we're moving page 2?
Yeah, so the second comment I had there, I just, so we talk about, we give the community an opportunity to address and to review this. And I guess I was just asking, you know, is there a plan that the community's involved in this, or is this meeting their community involvement? I was just curious.
You know,
Well, a couple things. So we, of course, advertise spread out the agenda, try to get it up as quickly as possible. I think there will be a period of time where the community will be involved. As far as 140-some pages of, I think it's 147 pages, so we need to have community involvement. That's part of this. You know, it's you all, it's the community. You know, the goal is to get as much community involvement as possible. So hopefully it catches on that, you know, we're doing this and we're doing by chapters at a time. Like Jim said last month, the third chapter is more of a staffing chapter to go through. Of course, we're going to share it with you because there are things we have to do with the county and whatever. So, Tiffany, you have any thoughts on ways to get, from the county level, helping us poor guys down here at the city? Do you guys get much involvement with, down at the county? No, Jim's saying yes.
Go ahead, if you want to.
So we're talking about county involvement in the
Uh,
master plan
yeah.
for
Mhm.
Taneytown.
Or the community's involvement
Yeah.
in the counties.
Oh, well, it'll
Master
be
plan.
different every 10 years, depending on the director and the directions they want to go, and the county commissioners.
Right.
It's up to the towns and the counties, obviously, how much they want to involve the community, if you want to go out on the street and, you know, to festivals, and if you want to have surveys, there's all kinds of things that you can do.
But there's a lot of involvement at the county level.
We are hoping for the 2025 plan to have a lot of involvement. For the 2014, I can't speak to that, I wasn't here at the time. And then 2019 updates with the Freedom Plan, there's a fair.
All right.
How do you advertise or let people know that you're actually working on that?
I can get back to you on that, I'm not sure how we will be doing it.
Curious,
We
yeah.
have website and regular outlets that we use.
When we updated about 15 years ago, whatever it was, on a few occasions when we had let the public know somehow that we was doing chapter 14 or whatever it was, we would get 2 or 3 people come at those meetings. Unless we really have to push it either through the different groups here in town that were having these sessions and what chapters, and maybe the newsletter or something.
So what I would like to do is use our social media presence to better publicize some of the things, you know, so not everybody goes to the website to check on the agendas for, you know, either mayor and council or planning commission. But right now, like, these first few chapters are, I mean, so chapter 2 does talk about our you know, our, let's see, what is it, our goals, overall goals, which we talked about, you know, several months ago. We tried to get the word out on that, you know, but we've kind of affirmed that. And the next chapter is going to be basically going back, looking at all the recommendations from the last plan, seeing what's been implemented, what we still have to do, and hopefully coming up with some,
Yeah, I guess,
maybe not explanations, but we certainly do want to get the community involved. But my concern is if we really push for that right now, while we're talking about the plan foundation for 2 months, people are gonna, my concern is people will lose interest very quickly if we kind of make a big, we're talking about the comprehensive plan this month, everybody come on out. And then we spend, 40 minutes talking about the plan foundation. That's not really what is gonna energize people and keep them involved, I think. I think that when we start getting into the things that are more, more subjective, more about, what's going to change in the plan, less of the boilerplate stuff. I think that's when we really want to push for the public involvement. And we have the city's Facebook page, Twitter account, and as well as the newsletter, the Taneytown Record. And we can also do online surveys. We can use some free survey tools to get some things out there, put links on the social media pages. So, somebody can, see, it'll very quickly get shared on one of the Taneytown, local Facebook pages probably. And, we can have a link to a survey and get some feedback that way. There are some online things that we didn't really exploit and weren't nearly as,
well, I'd certainly. use them,
universal
but,
as they are
yeah,
now.
You still have to put it in the newspaper because.
Oh, yeah, not everybody's right online, but I'm saying those are additional avenues we didn't really have before.
Possible suggestion might be like QR codes at the library behind the plastic right here outside of town. Maybe we could enlist small business on Main Street as well to have the QR codes, maybe 2. One could be the chapter that we're referencing the given month, and then the second QR code could be specific questions about that chapter for feedback or, like a survey. And maybe we could also have some of the chain businesses like Food Lion have the QR codes outside of there, and Kenny's and McDonald's, like places people go, and they could whip their phone out and have access to it.
Cool.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Tillman speaking for the Chamber of Commerce. When you talk about getting that information out, a little bit more direct to some of the organizations in town may help. Whether Envision Taneytown does have its adherents, and they do a good job, obviously, of getting out there and talking to people about things, in land use planning issues. I feel like I pay attention, and I haven't seen any of this. So whatever messaging you're doing is not reaching very far out. Publishing it, not just putting it on the city's Facebook page, but then the city directly putting that up on the neighborhood page and the community page, and not waiting for somebody else to share it. That you also get better control of the messaging that way. But it just seems like that information isn't getting out there because, like I said, I pay attention and I haven't seen it.
So for the second comment in purple, I would say leave it as it is, knowing that we'll do a better job.
Yeah, I wasn't intending on taking it off. I was just kind of curious, curious what we were gonna do about it. Awesome.
I agree with stating alternate in addition to the 5 members, just to make people aware. Is that what you were going for?
Yep, that's correct, because I don't get to vote tonight.
Where you at?
Where it says 5 members, the third purple highlight down on page 2.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, okay, so the next comment there, I was just kind of complaining a lot of times that I don't, it's hard to learn everything. There's a lot to learn here. Sure. Stuff like what we did with this, the fencing and everything, I just think more of that would help us all provide a better educated recommendation. So that's all that comment was. So just no change, just a comment that I popped in my head when I was reading that.
Okay, you good, good, 2?
Yep, page 3.
Okay, page 3.
Seems like those are standard changes based upon items that were done outside of us.
66B is not even active anymore.
With page 4.
I had nothing.
Any other comments, page 4, we good?
For
Jim,
those
you have
that are,
comment?
for those that are going to the Planning Commissioners Association conference, anything you learned over the next couple days that I've got wrong, feel free. I mean, correct me. I'm so certainly not flawless on this stuff.
Okay,
Okay, so we're on the next page, page 5, yeah. Yeah, so just, this is mainly for my education here. So we talk about the priority funding area and stuff like that. I just would like, I'm not sure exactly what that is. I can take a guess of what that is, but I didn't really find anything that defined what that was for me.
Yeah, that's legislation from the late 90s. So priority funding areas are areas where the state is going to direct their investment, direct state monies for projects. So, you know, roads projects, infrastructure, grant monies for water, sewer, things like that. If you are a priority funding area, you are more likely, that's where the state wants to channel that money. Because it goes back to the, I guess, you know, initial smart growth legislation where the idea was to not use state monies to promote sprawl-type development. So existing municipalities, everything that was within the corporate limits by a certain time frame was considered to be a priority funding area. And then some areas of the state where there are no municipalities, like Baltimore County, the area within the, I think, you know, roughly around the 695 Beltway was considered priority funding area, as were Owings Mills and the White Marsh area in Baltimore County. So they weren't incorporated entities, but they were designated as priority funding areas. And, you know, if you go through Owings Mills, you'll see the tremendous amount of money has gone towards like transit-oriented development there and things of that nature. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, you know, the priority funding areas. And and I only learned recently that, you know, for a while, the state was looking at newly annexed areas and saying, when we have a development plan for it, we'll talk about whether it's going to be added to the priority funding area or not. But now they are currently just, if we annex it, now it's automatically part of the priority funding area. So they've kind of rethought that. So anything in the city limits is considered
Priority funding.
PFA, yeah.
Yeah, so this says here that average density of 3.5 dwelling units per acre to qualify for state funds. So that's,
Right.
what that means to us is that we get funding for anything that's or 10,000 or below. Is that what it means?
We don't automatically get funding for it, but if we were to apply for a state grant or something, and it was an area that didn't meet that density, we would be in their rating scale on, you know, measuring that grant application. We would get dinged if we didn't meet that smart growth density, that 3.5 acres or 3.5 per acre. So it wouldn't necessarily mean we wouldn't get funding, but if it was down to, you know, our application and somebody who did meet that density, they would score higher and be more likely to succeed.
Tracking. Okay. I think thank you.
okay, moving on down the list.
Yeah, the next one, I just was looking for a kind of we talk about redevelopment and versus revitalization. So I guess I'm not really positive what the difference is.
So brownfields is a program that's targeted to bring generally industrial properties back into service, properties that may have environmental liabilities with them. Someone can enroll in the brownfields program, and there is, I believe, cost associated with doing that. But through this program, they can be insulated from liability in the event that some environmental hazard is discovered as it's redeveloped, the idea would be to take, unused industrial sites and put them back into use. But a big concern with a lot of those sites is that there could be environmental hazards from chemicals or things used on the site for years and years. And this Brownfields is a program that encourages the redevelopment of those sites, which people tend to shy away from, or developers have tended to shy away from out of liability concern for not knowing what's in the ground and things like that.
So in this case, redevelopment and revitalization are the same?
Right, so, nope, so the job creation tax credit to promote revitalization is a little bit different. That's not specific to industrial, that's creating a new, and I believe it's I don't remember if they consider full-time to be over 30 hours. I don't think it's a full 40 hours, but basically it's creating a new full-time job, and that there's a credit that an employer can file for that eases some of their obligations as they grow their workforce. They're also paying more out of pocket to things that, the employer typically covers for an employee. And this is supposed to offset some of that. I'm not by any means an expert on it. That's my layman's explanation. But that would apply for any growing business, really. Job creation tax credit. I will follow up with our economic development director on that and see if I can get some more detail and send it out to you guys.
Cool. Yeah, so my next comment there, I think that just goes away, right? If we, I think we removed that paragraph, right?
You're talking about the House bill stuff?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that just goes away, I think. Okay.
Yeah, in 2010, it was called the workforce housing, but they don't use that term anymore.
So my comments on 6 here, we talked about annexing, rezoning, and we don't have to get into it here if you don't want to. I was just kind of trying to picture, what does this, we just annexed some property here, and how do these paragraphs apply to what we just did? And so I was just trying to kind of understand that. And I don't know, maybe it's not necessarily a change, just a discussion.
Yeah, so we have, we have a town-county agreement in place with Carroll County, and that tells us the lead time for which we have to provide copies of things to Carroll County before the public hearing is held on an annexation. So we did that in the case of the Sewells. Admittedly, some of the documents were a little bit late getting to them, but let's see. So we have to, I'm not going to try to list all the specifics, but basically we need to get them the annexation agreement, the annexation plat, the draft language for the hearing notice, and I want to say that needs to be 60 days before the hearing. I don't have the agreement in front of me, so please don't quote me on the length of time.
Yeah, so that's something we did, and we had to do, and we did all that.
And the 5-year rule is if the density is substantially higher than that could be developed under the county zoning, the commissioners the zoning basically is frozen for 5 years, but the county has the opportunity to waive that zoning freeze. So the idea behind that is there have been instances where municipalities have annexed large swaths of land for residential development that were not in the county's plan for things like school capacity. And suddenly you had all these new students, and you might have a school that didn't have capacity, and the county, who typically provides the school systems, wouldn't have the funding mechanisms in place to address that. So that 5-year rule kind of came about to keep the municipalities from, not throwing in a bunch of houses that the county cover for schools and things of that nature. I think schools was the driving factor for it. But, you know, again, with the schools, the county commissioners did waive the zoning freeze. And that's actually what seemed to have prompted a lot of the interest that we did have in the Sewell Farm, because it was after that was in the newspaper that, you know, folks started contacting the city and asking about it. You know, so that's, with most of our recent annexations, the County Board of County Commissioners has been supportive of the annexations and has waived the 5-year freeze. There was only one in the last 15 years that wasn't the case, and that was a fair deviation from the comprehensive plan at the time also. And once we updated our comprehensive plan, then the commissioners went ahead and revisited it and waived the 5-year freeze, once it was more consistent with our comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you.
Page 7. Note at the bottom here.
So everything in red, I think, that just has to go away because of this.
Right, yeah, all the struck-through stuff is delete, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so my next question there was, so what's the average number of permits building permits that Taneytown does?
Recently, it's been much higher. You know, we've done, I don't know how many we did last year, but the last couple of years I was zoning administrator, we probably did 120, 130 new homes while Meads Crossing was building out. 35 to 50 was not unusual for a few years, but we've also seen years where there was nothing, where, you know, we went a year and had one house built. So it's all over the place, but
So, yeah, so not counting Meads Crossing or developments like that, you're thinking like 30 to 50 is probably an average?
is not unusual, yeah. We are likely to have a dry spell for a couple years now, because really the only thing in the pipeline currently is Garnet Ridge that you guys saw the concept plan for a few months ago. That's 50 dwellings, but it's going to take them some time to get through the plan review process, and then it'll take them time to get their building permits and grading permit and get the infrastructure installed. So it's probably going to be well over a year before houses start to go up on that. So, you know, this, in the next calendar year, we may see very few new homes being permitted. You know, it'll probably be limited to, you know, a handful of infill lots and things like that, unless there's maybe some minor subdivisions that create some buildable lots.
Cool, yep, thank you for that. Yep.
Basically, unless we got a development going in, then we're down in the teens probably.
Right, so, yeah, everything for like Meadowbrook and Meads Crossing, all the permits have been issued for everything. So I know there's still some construction activity happening, like in, I guess, Meadowbrook 7 is still building those 4 homes, but I haven't been out to Meads lately, but.
Okay, page 8.
Page 8, I was just, I guess, I'm sure we have a development capacity analysis somewhere. Is that true?
So we kind of rely on the water and sewer master plan for those are the biggies, is water and sewer capacity. We do have an adequate public facilities ordinance, and that's where we look at basically everything development related, to make sure that we can serve any new development or community that comes on board. So with that, we look at things from school capacity to water, sewer, fire protection is in there, and that's kind of a little bit of a concern currently because of the the manpower issue with a lot of the volunteer companies, and we know the county is working to address that with a hybrid emergency services program. But right now, I haven't checked the numbers lately. I'm not sure if any of the folks up there involved with the fire company or know the late or no response ratio right now, but I know it's been like right at the brink for a while.
So this is a report that we like get every 3 years and it's posted somewhere? Or-
So the water sewer master plan is amended twice a year, as Tiffany was mentioning, and they're currently working on the triennial update. That's an every 3-year report. And that, for us, that's the big one, because the water and sewer capacity is really the biggest driver for our capacity. We do capacity management reports for the water system and the sewer system. Aside from that, usually that's more something that staff develops and it goes to the Department of the Environment. But
But like the school capacity analysis and stuff like that, is that, who does that?
that's done by the county. I believe that the statistics are, not to put you on the spot, but is that on Development Reviews page, do you recall? I know you can go on the county website and find the school. I'm not sure if it's listed as concurrency management or where I found that one.
So it's usually, stuff like that's posted online, so,
Let's see.
I was just, I mean,
I
like,
think typically.
Yeah, there's a school facilities plan that you can find online, and that projects out for a number of years. When it comes down to actually certifying that, we reach out to the Board of Ed. There's somebody in the facilities department there that we reach out to and send them a letter, and they, fill out the form for us and say, Runnymede is at this capacity and projected to be here and here over the next, several years. And typically, school capacity has not been an issue for us in my tenure. I'm not sure before Runnymede was built, if, I assume Taneytown Elementary was probably, at capacity or beyond. I'm sure Runnymede relieved that substantially.
yeah, okay. Yes, I see the websites in the report there, so I guess that's where we go find them. Okay.
On to chapter 2.
Chapter 2, I don't think there was much to change in there.
Page 10.
Yeah.
Page 11, is that where you're on, 11?
12 is what I had.
Okay,
So
12.
that was just my own, I guess, personal thoughts there. We say we want to provide for a wide range of housing and density types, and I think we got enough high-density areas, so I'm not really in favor of any high-density developments.
I would say the townhome area in Meads Crossing, I was taking a walk the other day, there were 9 law enforcement cars, just the townhomes alone. So I stick to what I've said in the past, that Meads Crossing really was very good in that it provided affordable housing for those in the service fields. And then in the single families, there are another 11. I want to say there are 20 law enforcement that range from Hampstead, Park Police, Westminster, state troopers. I mean, it's amazing.
There is a lot of them out there.
But I think that opinion is not yours alone. I think there's a lot of thought that high density equals low income, and that there's, obviously a stigma attached with that, as was evidenced by the Taneytown Crossing project when it became known, before they came to the city, that somebody had applied for a low-income tax credit. And, that, again, there's semi-detached houses and a garden apartment building down there. And, so far, so good with it, but it's still new and fresh and everything. The next 20 years will tell, I'm sure. But there was
And that's a good example of how there was a lot of backlash back. I was on BZA at the time, and it was not subsidized housing, which that's what all the social media said. People were in uproar about that. It was a tax credit. So it's cheaper to build, but it's based upon income. Like, it was very different than what people made it out to be. And I mean, I guess that's just the nature of the business we're in, but misinformation is painful to read, especially when it catches fire and it's not true.
Right. And there are, a number of programs, but I think the one specifically referenced here was, what's known as Section 8, which if I, understand correctly, is the payment goes directly to the landlord. And, that project is not eligible for that.
Correct.
There may be people who get some other form of assistance. And, a landlord can't really ask where your money comes from to pay the rent, as long as, I guess,
So,
meet the credit, satisfy the credit reports and things like that when you apply.
yeah, my comment has nothing to do with
Yeah.
anybody's income
Yeah.
level. It's, what my experience, that the majority of homes like that after 20, 25 years don't look as nice
Okay.
as they did when they were built.
Okay,
That's all. Nothing to do with income.
okay, okay. It didn't intend to speak for you, but I believe that perception of equating them is certainly out there in the community.
Pretty much the community. Okay.
That's it, right?
Okay. So I gather for next month, we can add chapter 3, or we gotta be, not enough time to get to that?
Yeah.
But
Not
what we don't wanna do is drag this out without staying on it. Because once we're committed, we should
Yeah.
keep moving forward.
So,
We may shuffle things around a little bit. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to dedicate the time necessary for the chapter 3, but there may be a different chapter that's a little less cumbersome to get before you. So we might, if we want to keep things moving and have a chapter before you every month, we might go a little out of order. But
I think if,
I would like to see that.
yeah,
if we
I
can
think
do
as
that.
long as I don't care what chapter is next, as long as I know what it is. I have difficulty when I get stuff on Wednesday, making sure I have everything reviewed by following Monday. So,
and that's for something like this, that's a lot to try to read and digest that quickly. So we can try to get stuff, get these things out to you. Since they're done in-house, when they're done, we can try to email it out to everybody to give you longer to review. Chapter 3 is going to be time-consuming on the staff side. So we might need to find something that's a little bit more cut and dry as far as updating for next month.
Okay. Let's move on to new business.
Before we move on, did anyone else, I know we talked a lot about Dan's comments here. Did anybody else have comments or suggestions or?
I just
Okay.
read Dan's and thought
Okay.
about the,
Okay,
I think pretty much spoke for all of us.
so also going forward, if you have a question or a concern, I'm here 8 to 4:30, okay? Reach out to me, or to Jim, or whatever you want to do. We're here for your support, okay? I'd rather not be Sunday and Saturday and fun days like that. But if it is on occasion. But the norm, I'm here all day, we're available to you. If you need more information, you need something printed off, does everybody know where our E-code is? On our website, the planning and zoning manual.
Oh, yeah.
So, once you move around in that, it's a lot easier to figure out and understand. Trust me, I have a long way to go, but it's there. If you have a question, just, call us on that, okay? And we can get that going for you, okay? And I would like to get some of this bigger stuff out to you earlier in the month. Just need to make sure that, I'm abiding by all the rules as far as sending a body information, not breaking any rules. Jay got me on that.
Okay,
Okay?
all right. Thank you.
Sure,
Appreciate that.
absolutely.
All right, new business. Nothing. All right. We'll go around the room, see if we have any comments.
Nothing.
No comment.
Nothing.
Anyone from the floor have any comments?
I think there were some folks here before that were interested in the restricted general business district, but have since left. So,
Well, other than that, I guess it looks like their next meeting is November 28th. Does that suit everyone?
When's- Oh, never mind.
Yeah. After Thanksgiving, right? Yeah.
28th, good? Hold on a minute, I'll be
Yes.
good?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Garner?
Question, what's the status on incorporating the 80-some acres out of Cross Mill Road? Babco property? Any of that in the right of way of the bypass?
it is.
Is that gonna be protected?
We're trying, but we don't have we're talking with EVAPCO, but it's moving slowly.
Land up now, you land away, I mean, I don't quite understand all that.
Yeah. So the hope would be that they would annex, and part of their annexation agreement would reserve that alignment. But we don't have, we're still in conversation with folks at EVAPCO. So,
It's high density, it's gonna be on Little County Road, Cross Mill.
haven't seen any concept plans yet from them, so, yeah. It's certainly something that we're mindful of, because that almost every possible corridor alignment for Antrim Boulevard crosses that property somewhere. I mean, it's a big property, and like every version of the road hits it. So we are working with EVAPCO to try to preserve that.
Anyone else have anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. Lee and Brown. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, likewise. Thank you. Covered a lot of stuff here this evening.
Yes, yes,
Covered a lot of